Alright, I'm going to talk about my essay. It's called Trapped Within a Dungeon. Uh, yeah, let's do this. Yay. Um, the setting is it's a fantasy world, uh, made to be close to around like the Renaissance era. Whether or not I got that across or not is besides the point, but that's what I had in my head. Um, Takes place in the Duchy of Arat, which is fake, of course, but you know. Um, and it takes and a lot of the story takes place inside of a dungeon called Rapos. And dungeons are these magic things with like monsters and lots of valuables inside of them. And yeah, and people try to get those valuables out, and sometimes when those dungeons get too like overactive with magic and monsters, they can get really unstable and cause lots of bad things. Uh, that's for the plot talk. It it the story starts. Uh, it Most of the story takes place over around a week, but there's a flash forward of 10 years and a flashback right at the beginning. Uh, that takes place about 4 years before the main bit. So yeah, our main character, who doesn't have a name, I never gave him a name because I didn't think that. I don't know why. I just didn't feel like it was a good idea. Um, he's a mage who who was in a university, but he graduated. He got into pretty bad debt, and so he started working as a dungeon explorer, basically going around dungeons, hunting monsters within them, and getting all the valuable stuff out of them, like the monster materials or just like magic crystals that are inside. Um, he became really famous doing this and was invited by the Duke to help with the eradication of Rapos, the unstable dungeon. Jonathan is an old and very experienced warrior that mostly does um, dungeon eradications because, yeah, uh, he's he's experienced, but he isn't very observant. But he's very patient with people and kind. Uh, Gregory, a priest who was also invited by the Duke uh, a few times back, and now he's pretty regularly going on dungeon eradications with Jonathan and the other ones. Uh, yeah, and he's done it a lot. The Duke, which he doesn't show up in the story, but he's like, I mean, he's the one that forces our main character to do all of this in the first place, and uh, so I just put him in the slide because I thought he'd be important. And then Veronica and the other party members of the dungeon eradication team. I didn't name most of them, and Veronica is only named once, and stuff happened in the plot, which made them not important. Um, the plot. So I'm going to start like right at the beginning. So the main character uh, just got out of university. That's like the beginning of the story, and he's really excited. But after that, he gets into debt, and we go to a 4 year time jump where now he's a super popular, not popular, famous. If that's a better word for it. Um, dungeon explorer. Like everyone knows him. And because of that, he gets involved with the Duke. The Duke makes him go on the eradication team. Um, and meets up with Jonathan and the others. And And the main character is a very egotistical person. He thinks very highly of himself, even after going into the debt and being forced to be a dungeon explorer. He still thinks of himself very, very highly, too highly. And he is immediately thinks of everyone on his party as idiots, that he should be the one in charge, but because he's too lazy, he doesn't go in charge. That's the only reason why he doesn't get in charge, not because he's incompetent. But they go to Rapos over a few days. Our main character gets a little closer to them, but not by much. Jonathan, the main warrior of the party, the head warrior of the party, but not the leader, because Gregory is the leader of the party. I forgot to mention that in this character. Whatever. Jonathan keeps annoying our main character, and he doesn't like him at all. He likes Jonathan the least out of all of them. Doesn't really think much of any of the others. However, once they get into the dungeon and they start exploring it, it becomes unstable. And like I said, dangerous stuff happens when it becomes it was already unstable, but it starts to change shape, because when dungeons are unstable, they start changing shapes rapidly, at least in my story. But so the 4 fell through, and they all fell, and everyone other than our main character and Jonathan was left alive. I smelled way too much saying that. So Jonathan and our main character have a argument about whether or not they should try to make their way up, back out, or to go to the core of the dungeon and destroy it, and so that they can make it out, because those are the only 2 ways they can make it out. Our main character wants to run away, and Jonathan does not, knowing that it's basically they're going to die either way, and Jonathan would rather fight trying to eradicate the dungeon, the job he was given, than just die, for no reason. And our main character, not knowing what else to do, follows him. But and after about, I think, a day in the story of them just trying to go through the dungeon, trying their best to survive, the 2 of them start talking, and they get closer. Our main character learns about what Jonathan wants to do with his life, which is start working for the Duke. But brain. Right. And so eventually they make it down to the core, and there's a massive horde of monsters there. They fight the horde of monsters. Our main character realizing finally that there really is no other choice but to go all out, because they'll die no matter what. He decides to do a massive spell that could probably kill them all. Kill both him and Jonathan. But he does it, and miraculously they survive. And then the story jumps into 10 years in the future, and our main character has become very dear friends with Jonathan, and he's dealt with a lot of his ego problems that he had, which he was already starting to come to terms with them, because he realized Jonathan isn't as incompetent as he is, as he thought he was. Some irony is how Jonathan is unaware of how our main character actually feels about him for almost the entire story. Another thing is our main character, unlike the audience, is completely unaware of how stupid he actually is. Because our main character, other than with magic, is genuinely pretty stupid. And I tried to get that across with her, and what I did is, and some situational irony was, all of the characters expect the job to be very easy, but in the end, it was not, because, almost all of them died. The theme of the story is two things, which I know probably would have been too much for the length of the story I wrote, which is why both of them didn't come across nearly as well as I wanted them to. And that's my own fault for not just sticking to one thing. But it's the importance of other people and how you're not like the greatest thing in the world. And the importance to take risks with things when you're backed into the corner. You have to do something. You can't just sit there and do nothing. Yeah. I didn't get that across well, though. I'm sorry. The story, POV, is first person, from the perspective of course, our main character. The main type of conflict in the story is the eradication team. Like, the external one is the eradication team going against the dungeon. Yeah. And the internal conflict is the newbie dealing with his superiority complex and all that. Sensory imagery, I didn't really think about that when I was writing, so I don't have that. I don't have any good examples. But the miasma monsters was almost choking was one of them. It was the only one that I had, honestly. But some other two that are okay, in my opinion. Eventually, we made our way to a large open cavern in a large group of humanoid monsters with the dungeon core on the other side. That's like describing like the room where the dungeon core is. Bulky Warrior walked up to me. His face was covered in scars, and he had a large toothy grin. That is the characteristics of Jonathan, which were described in the story, and that's like visual imagery. Hopefully, that got. And yeah. And my resolution is that you should try to take risks in life and stuff. I did not do this good at all. Oh no. I think I'm good. Did I include everything?